Hello, good people of YouTube. Mountbatten here, and today we are discussing what ships I believe you should be looking to trade in when the trade-in event comes back up for the last 2 weeks of Update 14.5. So to give you guys an idea, we're currently in 14.5. 14.6 is supposed to go up around July 9th. So basically, the last week of June and the first week of July, you have the opportunity to trade in your undesirable ships in for shiny new ones. Now, as far as which ships you can trade in the event, and which ships you can get out of the event, I'll link the dev blog down below that has all that information. But I've already been getting questions about, hey, Sealord, do you think I should trade in this ship or that ship in for, a shiny new premium ship? And well, today I've narrowed it down to 5 premium ships that I think are worth trading in for a couple of reasons. And the trade-in event is actually a pretty good way to not only, of course, get new ships, but it's a way that you can essentially get free doubloons. You see, the way the trade-in event works is that you can trade in just about any ship you have in your port for a discount on a newer ship. Now, it can be a ship that you paid doubloons for, a ship that you paid cash for, or it can be a ship that you paid a resource for, be it a still ship, a resource bureau ship, or a coal ship. Now, still, resource bureau points and coal are all free in-game items that you can get with a bit of grinding. Obviously, coal is the easiest one to acquire in-game, as, of course, you don't have to, grind your life away in ranked or clan battles to get it like steel. You don't have to keep resetting and regrinding lines multiple times like research bureau points. You can get coal just from your daily coal containers, certain missions that are up in the combat mission tab, or they give it away quite a bit in events for, whatever event is going on at the time, and of course in the event pass as well, among many other ways that you can get coal. So, using that logic, this is a pretty good opportunity for you to exchange a coal ship for a discount, pretty hefty discount, on a new doubloon ship. That way you're getting this doubloon ship at, essentially a giant discount for essentially nothing, right? And that's where my list comes in. I've narrowed it down to 5 coal ships that I believe are a pretty good temporary trade. These are ships that, of course, you can get back right again after you turn around and trade them in the armory if you have enough coal, or of course just wait a little while, grind out your coal, and purchase these ships again. These are ships that are not leaving in 14.6 as well, so they'll still be there for you to grind out the coal to acquire them again if you wish to do so. But anyway, let's go ahead and get on into it. But before we do, make sure you drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel, all of that jazz. Helps out tremendously so on the YouTube side of things. But now let's begin with number 5, which is the Tier 7 British battleship, the Duke of York. You might be saying, Sealord, you love the Duke of York. Yes, I do love the Duke of York. She's a fantastic Tier 7 coal ship, and that's why she's on this list. She's a Tier 7 coal ship, meaning that she cost a measly 101,000 coal compared to some higher tier ships. Now, of course, this does mean that her trade-in value will be obviously a little bit lower than that of a higher tier ship, but keep in mind too, if you trade in a ship whose value is worth more than the value of the ship that you are acquiring, you don't get those doubloons in difference. They're just lost to the void. So the Duke of York is a good option if you're looking at, maybe acquiring like a Tier 8 or a Tier 7 premium ship in this trade-in event. Now, I also picked the Duke of York because while I do like the changes that were made to the King George V to give us the Duke of York, there aren't really that many differences between the Duke of York and the King George V. Like, yes, the AP has better pin angles, she has a slightly longer reload time, and they slapped Hydro on her for some reason, but that's really it. So, if you trade in your Duke of York for a shinier, newer premium ship, and you're waiting to grind her back with your coal, you still have the King George V that plays a whole hell of a lot like a Duke of York. In the meantime, the only thing you'll really be missing out on is the slightly improved AP pin angles and, sure, the exceptionally short range Hydro if you use it that much, which you really don't use it too much on Duke of York. I mean, like, yeah, it's pretty useful, you know, in the world of submarines that we have nowadays, but, like, it's not like the German long-range hydros, so there's that. So Duke of York's a pretty solid pick to trade in. Again, you can get him back for 101,000 coal, and then I guess you can go ahead and trade him right back on in if you really wish to do so, over and over and over again. So yeah, it's a ship that you can trade in for a pretty decent chunk of doubloons, but then pick right back up afterwards for a pretty low amount of coal. Anyway, going all the way down to number 4, we have the Tier 10 Soviet large cruiser, the Moskva. Now, Moskva, you might be thinking, okay, Moskva, it's a Tier 10 ship. That is a lot of coal to get back. Yes, it most certainly is a lot of coal to get back to the point to where you can purchase a Moskva yet again. But keep in mind that the Moskva, while yet again, in my opinion, an excellent Tier 10 coal cruiser, a cruiser that I would highly recommend everyone pick up, because it's a cruiser that teaches you how to play cruisers very, very well, because the Moskva is one of the few older ships in game that doesn't really have the weird armor that, like, the older cruisers have, where, like, you can get shot in the rudder, then suddenly your citadel is cracking in half, right? She's a really stout cruiser that can sit on an island and just tank for days, so forth and so on. But that description right there fits a lot of the Soviet large cruisers. There's a very good chance that if you do have a Moskva, you probably also have a Petropavlovsk, you probably also have a Stalingrad, and they all play fairly similar. I like to describe Moskva as kind of an in-between between the Petropavlovsk and the Stalingrad, because she is really tanky like the Petropavlovsk, but not quite as tanky as the Petropavlovsk. But her guns are also much more accurate than the Petropavlovsk, but they're also not quite to the level of the Stalingrad. And she does have smaller caliber guns than the Stalingrad, but you still get, you know, the Soviet AP, so you get all the goodness that the Soviet AP shells get at range with a quicker reload time. So it's a nice middle ground between the two ships. But again, if you've got the Moskva, you probably have the Petro or the Stalingrad. So yet again, like with the Duke of York, you trade in the Moskva for a pretty decent amount of doubloons, because this is a Tier 10 ship, right? So that is quite a lot of doubloons in terms of a discount that you're going to get trading the Moskva in for whatever ship that you're looking to get, and you probably have a ship that plays exceptionally similar to it in your port in the meantime. Moskva also has the 12-kilometer Soviet radar, but she's got a much longer run time than the Petropavlovsk does. You know, this is back when there wasn't too much of a difference between the American and Soviet radar, besides like a 2-kilometer range differential and a slightly shorter runtime on the Moskva radar. But yeah, it's a great ship, and one that, yes, I would recommend you grind back up to once you trade it in for whatever ship that you do wish to acquire in the meantime. I love the Moskva. Don't get me wrong, I do like my secondary ships, my close-in ships, but Moskva does very much have a special place in my heart, and look, it can get you a pretty nice discount on that shiny new premium ship that you're looking to acquire here in this event. But anyway, moving on down now to number 3, we have a ship that you definitely really won't have a problem trying to find a replacement that plays really similar to. That is the Tier 10 Japanese large cruiser, the Yoshino. Now, the Yoshino, how many friggin' cruisers do we have nowadays that play similar to the Yoshino? If we know how the Yoshino plays, it's a long-range, HE spammy cruiser. We have so many HE spammy cruisers in the game today, from medium range to long range. It really won't take very long at all to find a replacement for this type of play style in today's World of Warships. I mean, heck, you can choose between the Zhao or the Yodo. Hey, I remember that. The Yodo line to replace this ship. Although the Zhao is a little bit, not really a little bit, a bit shorter range compared to the Yoshino when it comes to the HE spam. Yodo, on the other hand, probably a better fit overall, although it is a light cruiser. Granted, the Yoshino isn't really that well armored for a heavy cruiser. I mean, how many times have you taken a shot at Yoshino, then now you've removed half of its HP? At least for the Yodo line, you've got the maneuverability to, wiggle your way out of the incoming fire. But anyway, yeah, I mean, the Yoda line, the Zao line. You can even play the Yoshino's torpedoless cousin, the Azuma, and the spot of it. And again, it's a tier 10 ship, so you're going to get a pretty good exchange rate for the doubloons. Wargaming hasn't released the exchange rate just yet for, how much of a discount you're going to get for each ship, but again, it's a tier 10, it's a coal ship, so you're going to get a nice chunk of doubloons worth of value out of the ship, and you can, turn around and grind it right back for coal. So it's basically, once again, free money, and a good chunk of it as well. So yes, Yoshino, it's also a really boring ship to play. The Yoshino and the Azuma, in my opinion, are two of the more boring coal ships because you just kind of send the back and farm HE. They're great for farming down damage, don't get me wrong, but it's just kind of mind-numbing sitting in the back trying to get your HE to land on the, whatever battleship it is that you're trying to farm down. Yoshino can at least be played from kind of close range, unlike the Azuma, because you do have the torpedoes, you do have a little bit better armor than the Azuma, but not saying you go in there and brawl all day, just that you can play it a little bit closer than her cousin, which, speak of the devil, is in our number 2 spot, the Azuma. Now, the Azuma and the Yoshino, they're both still available right now. They're both coal ships, so you could very well, have one, trade in the other one, and then just continue on playing the other one in its place. Which one would I trade in between the two? Well, I would trade in the Azuma because the Yoshino is a little bit more interesting to me, like I just told you guys in the Yoshino section. The Azuma is really boring to play because you don't really have that option to play it kind of closer like you do with the Yoshino, because the Azuma doesn't have the torpedoes, it's got less armor than the Yoshino, and all it's really got is the main battery guns. Now, the Azuma is also the tier 9 premium ship, while the Yoshino is a tier 10 resource ship. So the Azuma does get that premium economy, so you might trade in the Yoshino instead. It's worth more anyway, and you still have your premium credit printer that is the Azuma. So definitely, if you have both the Yoshino and the Azuma, it's a pretty easy decision on trading one of them in, right? You're going to trade in one, just pick which one you would. If you're me and you prefer the playstyle of the Yoshino and you would really miss that for the time period that you're building up your coal again, yeah, trade in the Azuma. Or if, you're in a different mindset and you prefer the premium income to the Azuma, yeah, trade in the Yoshino. It's worth more doubloons, and, play your Azuma in the meantime until you can grind up the coal to purchase back your Yoshino again. Yeah, I mean, you gotta think about this too. We are in a place where we haven't had, an actual new coal ship release in a very long time. So it's a very good chance that you probably have a nice stockpile of coal laying around, so you could also just purchase one of these ships to trade it in, and again get free doubloons that way essentially. But yeah, that's another trick you could use. But anyway, we come down to our number 1 spot, which is held by probably the only ship on this list that I would not recommend picking up again if you do have it to trade in, and that is the tier 9 French premium large cruiser, the Carnot. The Carnot is it is one of the least enjoyable premiums in game, in my opinion, and that's putting it pretty nicely. The Carnot is another interesting design choice in the French nation, because it doesn't really share too much with the main French cruiser line, and it doesn't really share too much with the French battle cruiser line either. They've got some vague similarities, and you can tell, okay, it's a French ship, but, it's missing a lot of the things that make, the French ships French. If you take a look at other nations' large cruisers, with the exception of the Hildebrand, right? Wargaming have done a pretty good job of mixing in a little bit of their main cruiser line and their national identity with the ship, but not so much with the Carnot, because the French Henri line, as I'm sure most of you are well aware, they are great throttle juking ships. You know, they kind of sit at mid-ish range. They annoy you with HE. When you turn to try and slap them with AP, they load in the AP into their tubes, and they blap you from, medium range with their reload booster, and then they laugh in French as they, kind of skedaddle away into the night, going, mock Jesus with their engine boost, right? The French battle cruiser line is much more of a mid to closer range ship. They've got, they're basically overgrown Dunkirks, right? You get the engine boost, you get the reload booster, you get crazy maneuverability, this, that, and the other on the battle cruiser line, like the Marseille is an insane cruise. I would highly recommend you grind out if you haven't already. And then we get to the Carnot, which it's like, okay, it's got the French AP, that it very much does have, and it's got 305mm guns, which aren't the Dunkirk guns or the guns of the battlecruiser line. Like the Brest and the Marseille, they have 330mm guns, while the Carnot gets 305mm guns, which you can find on the Cherbourg, which is the Tier 8 battle cruiser. So it's like you putting Tier 8 guns on a Tier 9 ship. Okay, do they at least have like fast reloads? No. The Carnot has a 20-something second reload, like a 25-second reload on those Tier 8 guns and a Tier 9 super cruiser. So it's like, okay, well, longer reload, smaller guns, must be accurate, right? No, the guns aren't accurate at all. So, now, it's meant to be a close-in AP-focused cruiser, which you think, okay, well, it's French, right? It's got the speed boost, yes, and with the speed boost, it is a pretty maneuverable and pretty fast cruiser, but it's missing torpedoes, and it's missing one of the most French things in the game, which is that reload booster. So, if it had a reload booster, I could forgive it for having, Tier 8 guns and a 25-second reload. If it had that, that nice 50% reload booster that the Henry gets, that the Marseille gets, that all the French cruisers get, the higher tier cruisers get, it's missing that, which is very odd. So, but you might be saying, well, okay, it's fast, it's got, the 305mm gun, so sure, they can still do things pretty well, and yeah, the guns are pretty nice when they connect and all that jazz, but look at the ship. The ship is massive. It's got a massive broadside. It stands up out the water so dang tall, so it just gets farmed down by everyone and their mom at Tier 9. And keep in mind, Tier 9 nowadays gets yoinked up into super ship games so much now, so you're there with a large cruiser with French armor that's meant to be played close, but you don't have torpedoes, you don't have a reload booster, the guns aren't all that accurate, and you're a massive target. So that tends to be not an overly swell time in higher tier games. So yeah, if you do have the Carnot, and you aren't, just keeping it in port to keep it out of your Santa container or your super container, I would highly, highly recommend trading it in the trade-in event, because, well, it's not an overly great ship in my opinion. And it is a Tier 9, so you can very much get a nice chunk of doubloons for it, or at least a good trade-in value, right? Because it is a higher tier premium ship. So you can trade her in, pick up a much better ship in exchange, and now you've won the day. And I would not recommend grinding back up to her to, trade back in or reacquire, unless, again, you're trying to keep her out of a Santa container or something like that. So this is the only ship on this list I would say don't worry about grinding back up the coal for. The other ones, yeah, the other four are really good premium ships. This one's just an easy, just toss it into the trade-in event and get something so much better in exchange for it. So guys, those are my top 5 ships to trade in. I'll be taking a look at what ships you can, what ships you should be trading in for as we get closer to the trade-in event. But if you want to, think about what ships you want to trade in and such, and like I said, some of you, a lot of you, have been asking me what ships I would be trading in, but these are them right here, ladies and gentlemen. So, hope you guys have a wonderful Monday and wonderful rest of your week. I hope to catch you guys in the next one.